The Supreme Court has fixed Friday today, the 12th of January 2024, which is for judgment in the Kano state governorship election appeal. We have also, barring the last-minute change of plan, the Apex Bank will deliver the judgment in 6 other governorship disputes before it. And, the major ones that it's kind of bringing a bit of skeptical, mixed feelings of things could happen. Hyping tension is in the Zamfara state, Plateau state, and also Kano state, which has been a bit of brief of, or should I say, a lot of, beefed up of security personnel in this particular state. So we have in the studio joining us Clement Oloyede. He's the Group Politics Editor, Daily Trust. Good morning and thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's talk about the expectations of what could be the outcome of this judgment of the Supreme Court, and how do you think people would react to this particular thing?
Well, like you said in your introduction, there are 8 states where we're expecting judgment from the Supreme Court today, but the expectation of most Nigerians is about 3 major states: Kano, Zamfara, and Plateau, and this is not connected to the development in those states, where, for instance, all the 3 states are being governed at the moment by opposition parties. For the case of Kano, the NNPP, Zamfara, there is a PDP, and the same thing with Plateau State. And the general feeling at the early stage when the governors were sacked by the Court of Appeal or the tribunal was that the ruling party was trying to take over all the states, that it was not able to win at the ballot. But election is not only won and lost at the ballot, as the case has always been with Nigeria. You have up to the Supreme Court. And in the case of Plateau, for instance, the governor was declared validly elected at the tribunal. When he got to the Court of Appeal, the story changed. The same thing with Zamfara. The governor was declared validly elected at the tribunal. But when he got to the Court of Appeal, the story also changed. But for the case of Zamfara, it's a little bit different from Kano and Plateau, because he was not outrightly sacked. His declaration was only invalidated in the sense that the appeal court found that elections in 3 local governments, Magaji, Maradun, and one other local government I can't remember offhand, that those elections were not properly collated, and that the elections there are inconclusive. And as such, the Court of Appeal ordered a run election there. But for Kano, it's been a roller coaster from the get-go, from the tribunal. The governor was sacked, and the same thing was affirmed at the Court of Appeal. But Kano generated a lot of controversies, more because of what happened after the Court of Appeal, and when the certified true copy of the judgment was released, and it was observed that the last page of the certified true copy contains some inconsistencies. In one breath, the honorable judge, the presiding judge of the court of the tribunal, the chairman of that panel, held that the appeal by the APC and its candidate Nasiru Yusuf Gawuna succeeded, and as such, the governor is still sacked. But in another breath, the court still said the appeal by Governor Yusuf succeeded and awarded 1 million cost against APC. So this controversy raised the tension in the state, with both parties claiming that, don't forget that when the judgment was read out in open court, there was no controversy. Everybody assumed that, everybody agreed that the governor was sacked again. But when the CTC came out, the controversy came up, and both sides were claiming victory. The people said the judge has said our election was validly done. And because of that, a lot more attention was generated on Kano. People started questioning the validity and the legality of both the CTC and the oral judgment given in the court. But the appeal court came up and said, okay, this is just clerical errors. It happens once in a while, but legal opinions and some public opinions have said, no, clerical error should not have appeared at this level. It's too huge. The Court of Appeal is not just a trial court, it is the second most important court of the land. So that has continued to generate controversy. For the Plateau, it was more like when the tribunal held that the governor was validly elected, but the Court of Appeal few weeks or about a month or so later started sacking the lawmakers on the strength that the PDP did not obey a subsisting court order that said the primary that they held was not validly done, and they went ahead. It was a pre-election matter. So, and when the Court of Appeal started, for the House of Assembly, State House of Assembly, and even up to Senate, the Court of Appeal is the last court that can decide. So when they started sacking these lawmakers, there was tension in Plateau already. Even before the Court of Appeal judgment, there was tension that, okay, the reason the Court of Appeal is giving for sacking these lawmakers is the same boss that brought all of them to the poll, in the sense that there was no validly held primary. So when the Court of Appeal also abide with his other decision in the lawmakers' judgment and sacked the governor, the tension went up. You saw different manners of protest, women protesting, men protesting, youth protesting, and saying that they want to remove their governor, while APC in the state said, okay, we've been saying this from the beginning, that the governor was not validly nominated. So in these 3 states, I narrow it down to these 3 states because they are at the moment the most contentious among them. For Bauchi, the governor had gotten his judgment at the tribunal. He got the same judgment at Court of Appeal. Most people are not really expecting a big upset in Bauchi. Same goes to Lagos. Same goes to Abia, Ebonyi, Cross River, and the other states that is. And so these other states, people are not expecting upset. But for this 3 states that we've analyzed at the beginning, any decision made today is an upset.
Okay, I'm not going to go into anticipation of what we expected by the day, because the matter is in court.
Yeah, of course.
And of course, just like Justice Dattijo did point out during his valedictory exit message, he did talk about, let's not go into media trial and all of that. And that would take me back to Kano. I remember that, you were part of this journey from the beginning when it has to be with Kano. And even the first judgment that was delivered, you were just there, just giving us all of the information. Just to point out, this is the ever-celebrated Clement Oloyede from Kano. He was our bureau chief in Kano, and now he's in Abuja as our politics editor. So give us a sense of how tension looks like in Kano, because I am in Abuja. I read, you give me information about that, but they say when you experience something, it's different from when somebody's feeding you information. You're not in that location.
Of course.
Give us a sense of how tension is in Kano and how this could cause some sort of offset.
Of course. I've covered elections in other states and monitored some other states before the 2023 election that I was in Kano, just as you rightly put. But Kano election is a different ball game. There's a saying in Kano, in Hausa they say, Siyasa Kano, saying Kano, which naturally translates that Kano politics is just left for Kano people. You can't understand it, because you may think they are going this way, and at the end of the day, they go a different way. So
it's unpredictable.
It is unpredictable. Because look at the figures of the election. For the primary, the gap between the NNPP candidate, that's Rabi Musa Konkoso, and the current president is a wide margin, almost ×2, even more than ×2.
So what's the factor? What are those factors then? Is it the population? Is it, we have a lot of people who understand the intrinsic nature of politics in the northern part of the country?
Yes. One, the population. And secondly, Kano is a politically literate environment. People understand politics, they participate in politics, and they see every process as a very vital process.
They're very much involved.
Yes, they're very involved. So it's difficult to just say, wake up one day and say, okay, based on this is what is going to happen. Before the election, even till the day when the coalition was going on, when we were there, no one can outrightly tell you that, okay, this is the person that is going to win. And I say this without fear of contradiction, that before the election, the Konkosia movement appeared to be on ground, very, very much on ground. Everywhere you go is the red cap and everything. So everybody naturally, in other states, when you see that kind of mass movement, you naturally just say, okay, Konkosia will sweep the election. But not even the Konkosia stalwart can outrightly tell you that we have won this election as of that time. So everybody was still agitated, everybody was still expecting, okay, there can just be any change, any moment, anything can just happen. So when the election was announced, I will go back to that because it would need to. A lot of people have forgotten what happened during that period. When the coalition was going on, there were fear already on ground that we're going to have a repeat of 2019, which for those that were not probably savvy that time, the 2019 was the inconclusive election that brought back former Governor Ganduje into this thing after the same Abba Kabir Yusuf was already leading and there was infractions, but INEC had to do an inconclusive. So people were afraid that with the result going on, the gap was not much. But the results that we were getting from almost all the local government, we had 44 local governments in Kano. I think, if I'm not mistaken, not less than 40 had serious issues that led to cancellations. And the tallying that people were doing then, that the manual tallying everybody were doing, the gap between the winner and the second runner-up is not enough to declare the election when you look at the principle of lead margin, because there were many local government that election were cancelled. And because of that, a lot of people were already afraid. There was a lot of tension in town. Security had to be... Even I remember that day that the commissioner of police had to personally come down to the collation center, stayed there with us throughout the midnight. That's to tell you how the Kongosia movement, they were protesting, they covered one street, the APC people covered another street, just to tell you, in the middle of the night. And
this is happening in more than 20 local governments, if I'm not mistaken.
More than 20 local governments.
Interesting.
In fact, close to 40. More than almost all the local government had issue, but at least 25 local government had serious cancellation. So a lot of people were expecting that, okay, this election probably will go in the inconclusive way. But to the knowledge of the returning officer, the calculations were made, some subtraction were made, and the election was declared, and the governor was returned elected. So from then, a lot of people expected that, okay, the APC will not let go. But surprisingly, a few days later, the candidate of the APC, Nasir Yusuf Governor, issued a voice message, not outrightly congratulating or conceding defeat, but he said in that audio message that if Abba Kabir Yusuf is the one God has designated for Kano State at this moment, that people should work with him. So the media and everybody interpreted this that, okay, he has conceded. And when the tribunal opened, he did not file an appeal, but the party filed an appeal. I remember at the tribunal, this was part of the argument of the NNPP that since the candidate did not file an appeal, you cannot give him the fruit of the election. But the tribunal in its wisdom says that according to the Electoral Act and the Constitution, the ticket belongs to both the party and the candidate, and either of them that files an appeal suffices. So that was what happened, and when the judgment was done, the tension was much in town, but the security were up and doing, and over time, there was just, before I left Kano at least, and up to now we still communicate with a lot of people there, I think people have become so, maybe, I don't know the word to use to describe them, but they are not expecting so much again. Kano, a lot of people that know Kano in those days, when things like this happen, you will be seeing a lot of violence reactions.
But we did actually saw some level of violence at least. I mean, we saw how a musician whose only job was just to sing political songs, you know, how his house got raided on, you know, by mobs, angry mobs happening there. And you know, talking about these three states, these are states that already have their own issues. You talked about the literacy when it comes to politics in Kano. Let's not forget Zamfara. There's a lot of insecurity happening in that, and the Plateau state is a place where a little bit of tension could lead up. We see how this happened in Plateau state. So how do you think, you know, these people in this state, how do you think that at least they could be able to adjust to whatever the outcome should be in this tribunal, or in this Supreme Court judgment, rather? I
think it's just only reasonable for all the residents in this state to just know that whatever is decided today, still have 4 years and you can still go to the polls. Whoever the court decide that is the governor, he's not a stranger from another state. He's still a citizen of that state. And no matter how you want to play the game, some citizens of that state actually voted for that person, even if you say it's not. But when you talk about how this is, I think at this moment, especially Kano, Kano has had a lot of experience of violent outbreak, political reason. I think at this point, people are already tired of losing their properties, burning and killing and everything. So people already on their own, they are taking initiatives at community levels to say, okay, guys, don't do this. Things people at the mosque, the imams are preaching and telling people that no, violence because of politics is not the thing. And in Zamfara, as you said, if there is a political tension now and it leads to violence, the bandits that have been ravaging the state will take full advantage of this and make the state more lawless. The same thing with Plateau, because of, you saw just a few weeks ago what happened in one of the local government. So imagine if there's a violence in this state capital, it will only spread to other local government and the state will become inhabitable even to the people that are thinking they are fighting for their rights. So it's just common sense. As they said, though, they say common sense is not common.
So common.
For people to just allow the will of the Supreme Court to have its way.
Now, let's take a look at the political sphere in Nigeria, judging from the 2023 elections, all of the twists and turns that happened. I can categorically say that since Nigeria started the democratic rule, we haven't seen this kind of offset, and that inundated the fact that, there's some sort of revolution in the political sphere in Nigeria. But how do we explain the fact that, people went to the polls to elect their governor, and at the end of the day, it's been determined by what the Supreme Court actually say at the end of the day? Do you think that in the next election, just like you pointed out, in 4 years you have to go to the poll, do you think that Nigerians will have that confidence, spend your time, go cast your vote, and believe that the right candidate will be chosen at the end of the day?
Our level of political literacy is still growing day by day. I think the mistake a lot of people used to make is to compare our democratic process, democratic journey with advanced countries that have taken years. You can't compare Nigeria, who is just about 25 years in the democratic process, uninterrupted, with what America is doing over 200 years. It takes time. That is what, of course, maybe politicians are the ones that use this word to suit themselves, that when they advocate for patience. But that is the truth. We are not where we used to be in 99. Of course, you may say, okay, there are a lot of offset with this election, and that is not because the election was totally bad. It's just because of the awareness that social media has created. In 99, you only just listen to what they say on radio, on TV. In 2015, I still even used to believe that 2015 election was the most contested election in Nigeria. But because people have become more internet savvy, they use the social media more, everybody can express their opinion these days. And because of that, a lot of people feel that what I say is a fact. If the election, if INEC succeeded in 90% of this election, for instance, and maybe have some issues in 10%. Of course, the BVAS was not perfect. The IRF was not perfect. The INEC did not deliver on his promise on IRF. But should we, because of the 10% failure, throw away the 90%? This is still success.
I was thinking 2019 election. Yes.
If you compare it to 2019, we have improvement.
I was thinking it was the most contested, where we have over 73 political parties coming out to say that they want to vie for political positions.
But everybody know that those... Okay, you mean 2019 or 2023?
2019. I think it was after the 2019 election that those political parties...
to cut it down.
Exactly.
Because then it was just a cosmetic contest, so if I may use that word. You see a lot of political parties on the ballot paper, but how many of them even, apart from the first two parties, that's the APC and the PDP.
All right, Clement, let's take a look at what's happening already in the screen. I mean, you mentioned the red carpet.
And so we can see that on the screen.
Exactly. The Federal Capital Territory is experiencing the Concosia movement.
Oh, this is in Abuja?
Yes, this is in Abuja, around the Supreme Court area.
Yes, I can see now.
So medias are left outside and everybody is still waiting for the results of what would happen. And we saw how, the earliest, I think the Court of Appeal, when they made this judgment last time, we saw how somebody was trying to grasp some air, and he was part of the Concoursia movement. So people are already tensed. But would you say that in 2023, why people are a bit skeptical of this judgment and feel a bit hurt on what is going on, it's because of how 1 minute, like you mentioned, they thought it was just about the polling unit.
Yes.
But then when you go deep into technicalities, it's bringing all these pre-election things and the rules of how the elections should even go, of people breaking these rules and regulations. Would you think? Do you think that?
Yes, I will answer your question the same. I will use the same answer to answer my dear's question also.
Okay.
In the sense that election cannot just be won with the way we are at the moment in Nigeria. Election can't just be won and lost at the ballot. We all know the way Nigerian politicians are. It's not Nigerian. We know the way we are as Nigerians. If you leave it to politicians alone, that okay, whoever INEC declare is the winner, and that's it. You know that even people to serve as INEC official, it will take the grace of God, because even at this moment that you still have the court. You see, at some instance, they are holding INEC officials at gunpoint to just announce the result. So imagine if there's no even court to resort to. So I think it's still a gradual process. Even in advanced countries like United States that will keep making reference to. Up to date, the statement by Trump about the election credibility is still affecting, that's 4 years later or 34 years later, it's still affecting the credibility of the election. So it's a gradual process as we keep adding. But like I said, to answer both questions, Nigerians should not, because of some little issues, technical issues, and maybe not just technical, maybe they feel that the INEC failed on some of its major promises, especially as it relates to IRF, but they should understand that it's a gradual process. We were not where we used to be. And I believe that 2027 election, even from the off-cycle election, things will only get better. So Nigerians should not, we can't even afford to lose hope. Because if we lose hope on the electoral process, that means that the worst thing that we're afraid of, we will just allow it to come.
It's just for Nigerians to keep being literate, push it to understand the knowledge and the importance of going out to vote, because there was a bit of turnout or low turnout in other parts of Nigeria, because like Imo State and all that. But yes, let's talk about Zamfara.
Not from the numbers. Not from the numbers. Yes, we reported that there were turnouts, from the governorship
of course, that's
election.
part of the success of this election. If not because of beavers. A lot of states that we used to have 2 million, 3 million voters. But suddenly, because it's now technical, it's now computerized, you got the real figure. So this is a success. And someone shared, just within this week, we were discussing with someone who just came back from the United Kingdom. He has been voting in the United Kingdom, and he told me that, see, Nigeria, we judge ourselves too much. In UK, for instance, as he described to me, from the process of registering to voting, you may not even see any police officer on this thing. That is because they already have systems outside the election that make things work. To deliver electoral material to places is not an issue. But in Nigeria, even for you to travel from your house to the studio today, is not in your control.
You probably might meet some.
You might meet some things on the ground that will just happen. So if on a natural life, on a natural day-to-day activities, some of this Nigerian thing can affect us, why won't it affect?
When do we get rid of that Nigerian thing? That's the question.
It's infrastructure. It's when we develop infrastructures to a certain level. For instance, anywhere you want to take electoral materials to, as I said in UK, the planes are there, the waterways are there. But look at what we have even in Bayelsa, this off-cycle election.
Yeah, there was a problem of conveying electoral materials.
Electoral materials capsized in the water. So what happened in in that instance? Would you still blame INEC? So there are human factors, but majorly the human factors are brought to the fore because we don't have the infrastructure and the system that will support every other aspect of our day-to-day life.
Let's talk about Zamfara. I want to get your insight on what's happening. So already there's a decision that they have to retake elections in these 3 local governments. So what are we doing in court?
Okay.
That's one thing.
Yes, that's a good question. For a lot of people a lot of people will have that same question you have in mind. The appeal, there are 2 appeals now. An appeal and counter-appeal. The PDP is appealing to say that the judgment of the Court of Appeal should be quashed in entirety, which means that if it's quashed, Governor Dauda Lawal will retain his position. While the APC is claiming that in this counter appeal, probably saying that, okay, the decision of the Court of Appeal should be upheld, the election in those 3 states should hold. So the 3 local government that the run election, the inconclusive election were declared, you can't have those elections there until the process is concluded. Okay. Because now today, the Supreme Court in its wisdom can say, okay, no, the Court of Appeal did not consider the right thing and nullify his entire decision. And which means that the governor retained his seat. Or it's even possible that today, the Supreme Court can say, oh, it's not even just the 3 states. Add 5, it's not only the 3 local government, add 5 more local government. Or it can even say outrightly, the PDP candidate was not validly nominated and APC candidate should be sworn in. So you see, for governorship, whatever decision has been made, even if it's just one local government or one polling unit, they say there should be a rerun election until the Supreme Court decides. And you know, we don't used to, it wasn't like this in the past. In the past, the Court of Appeal used to be the last deciding court for governorship. But I think, say 2011 or so, that changes were made. And they have to go up to the Supreme Court, which makes it and as people have argued, it makes it more cumbersome. It's only the governorship election that have 3 stages of adjudication. First at the tribunal, you go to the Court of Appeal, then you go to the Supreme Court. Even the presidential election is just 2 stages. The presidential election petition tribunal, which is the Court of Appeal, and the Supreme Court. For the National Assembly and the State Assembly, it's just 2, the tribunal and the Court of Appeal. So people are asking why does the governorship have to have 3 steps? Because assuming there's still another court after Supreme Court, I believe that Nigerians will still go there and appeal the decision.
One more chance. You know, we're always asking for one more chance. And I think that, you know, this is democracy and we are actually giving, you know, people the chance to present their case.
Of course.
If you think that the Court of Appeal didn't do well, let's meet at the Apex Court where after the decision of the Apex Court, only God can decide.
Like Hausa people say, go to Allah.
Exactly. If you are not satisfied, you can just say, no problem. I leave you to God. That's the only thing you can do after the Supreme Court today.
So we have our reporters, you know, in Kano, in Abuja here. We wanted to get a feel of exactly what is going on.
Yes, I think we were expecting, you know, live feeds from Kano and also the Supreme Court here. I think we're having a bit of a network issue at the moment. But, you know, before the end of the program, I'm hoping that we'll be able to get a feel of what's happening outside the studio and bring you some of these happenings at the Supreme Court here in the Federal Capital Territory. And, of course, Kano State, where our reporters are doing everything that they can to join us here in the studio. But not to worry, we'll take a look at some of the selected national dailies in a bit and then take the live feeds. We'll do that concurrently and see how we can give you the best information this morning. But let's get back to the studio and have more discussion about, you know, this. But it's going to be my last question now, before we let you go here. And I'm just so tempted, you know, to ask you about the expectations. But if I ask you the expectations, we will be breaching that rule of, you know, the sub-judice, you know, the media trial and all of that. And we do not conduct media trial here in our studio. But, you know, what's your final, you know, say to the public, you know, concerning this, you know, keeping calm? We've been saying keeping calm for a very long time. But what would you say now?
Well, even if you have started by asking me of my expectation, I will have find a way of dribbling you because
I know.
I had experience covering courts before I went to Kano.
Before you answer that, all right, we have Ibrahim, our reporter, here that would be giving us what is happening in the environs, just the environment of the Court of Supreme Court in Abuja. Sagir, good morning. Sagir, are you with us? Okay, I think, of course, the feedback seemed to be having a bit of issues. All right, so let's hear from you. Okay. You were talking about expectations and how you were trying to find your way.
No, he probably would never talk about the expectations.
I would not talk about the
He was telling us how he was going to use the media, media experience
to just navigate.
Exactly.
And what I would have said simply is that may the best candidate win. Because either of the candidates, they are all citizens of Nigeria, they are all citizens of their state, they have equal right to govern the state. But my words for the people is that Nigerians have to understand that election is a process. And the process does not start and end at the ballot. What do I mean by this? Nigerians need to pay attention more to party politics. Nigerians need to get involved, because that is where the election is actually won and lost. It's not at the poll.
I mean, if there is anything this tribunal cases have shown, is that,
yes,
going back deep to the
most of the issues that are coming up at the court now, they are actually internal party arrangements. So if Nigerians pay attention more and make sure that the candidate that comes out from each of the party are the candidate that they are okay with, and not just that the process according to the constitution of those parties are followed, these things will not be happening. Each of these parties have legal officer for crying out sake. But you still see that they allow some of these breaches to happen, and with the hope that they will go to court. And the only thing you can get from court is the evidence you put before the court. That's what is going to decide on. So Nigerians, I call on Nigerians is to be more involved. This is not even the time to start saying that INEC has disappointed, we're going to sit back. In fact, if there's anything, this is the time to put more effort, because we can only get better. If and when there is a popular saying that when you stay back, you allow a free room for those that you don't even want access to. I spoke recently with one federal lawmaker, and he said, if Nigerians are saying that those of us at the National Assembly are not qualified, should INEC go and use rope to drag the qualified people from their house and bring them to the National Assembly?
No.
If people don't participate, it's only the people that have intention of participating, whatever their intention is at the end of the day, is left for them. But they are the only one that will come out. And when those people participate throughout the process, they become qualified.
Exactly.
So Nigerians just need to get involved more. If you see people that you think deserves to be there, campaign for them.
Let's get to Sagir now. Sagir Ibrahim is at the premises of the Supreme Court here in the Federal Capital Territory. Sagir, good morning to you.
Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning to everyone in the studio. Good morning, Nigeria.
Sagir, what's going on at the Supreme Court this morning, around the Supreme Court where you are? What can you tell us about, the developments around that area?
Today is Judgment Day for 8 states particularly. To mention some of them, it's Kano, Zamfara, Ibrahim, Plateau, Lagos, Bauchi, Abuja, and very recently Cross River State. The Supreme Court will be delivering judgment on these states following the election litigation that has carried to post the March 18 governorship election held in 2022. Well, I can say one thing for sure, that the situation is quite mixed up. As a matter of fact, I'm standing in front of the office of the head of civil service of the Federation, simply because I couldn't access the junction just very close to the National Assembly. Yes, so if you can see from the camera, you notice probably supporters of the candidate of Kano State, of course the governor of Kano State, Ibrahim. Also, we couldn't pass through this area, talk more of the Supreme Court entrance. That's because of how tight the security is. The major issue, unfortunately for some of us journalists, we've been unable to pass through this checkpoint because we didn't get the accreditation tag, which of course was as a result of the press corps chairman's vehicle, which was unfortunately stolen, and some of the tags were inside. But due to that, it's really tight here, and we've not been allowed into the premises.
Sagir, all right, based on your readings of the body, the movements of these people, how would you say they are accommodating or receiving this tension? How are they able to, do you see them looking all relaxed, in the midst of this high tension of the final Supreme Court's judgment?
Okay, so first of all, there's no tension here. This is because the security agencies have given a strict announcement: no accreditation tag, no access to the premises, and they've cordoned up such a wide area around the Supreme Court premises, that a lot of individuals who might want to speak anything in terms of probably a demonstration or the support process or whatever it is, will not be able to do so. At least if you have any form of effect, if they are going to be doing so close to the Supreme Court area, but unfortunately, they will not be able to do so. So what we can do basically is just bystanders standing, hoping for the proceedings to commence at 10 a.m. and hopefully proceed to the outcome of the election. So for tensions, there's none here.
Normally when you're going into the court as supporters, some supporters are allowed into the courtroom. What's the situation now? Is it strictly by invitation? Is it strictly by the council of the different governors or the aspirants or the candidates that have filed their case in court today that are allowed into the court premises? What's the situation? Because I can see a lot of people locking around that environment. And what are the criteria for some of the citizens not allowed access into the apex court environment or area?
So the security is tight, like I said, and the fact that these journalists were denied access shows how really tight it is, especially because they're supposed to be allowed. Ordinarily, if you have, for instance, the Supreme Court said ID card or your media organization's ID card, however, that has not been the case. We've also seen senior advocates of Nigeria and their entourages, asked to turn back because they didn't have the access card to the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, for some of us, our names were sent to the DSS offices at the entrance of the villa, but unfortunately, we were not even able to get to that point before accessing the premises, simply because from the entrance here, if you do not have the Supreme Court accreditation tag, you will not be allowed to pass.
Wow. All right. And that applies to individuals as well.
That applies to anybody who wants to access the Supreme Court.
Okay.
And does not have the tag.
All right. Thank you very much, Tiger. Thank you.
Thank you for that update. All right. Let's move on to Kano State. We have Idris Jibrin, our correspondent, who would be giving us updates on the tension or the lack of it in Kano. Good morning, Idris. Good morning, Idris. Can you hear us? All right, we seem to be having a bit of technicalities. All right. Idris, tell us, what is the tension like in Kano State at the moment right now?
Very deserted, and this is obtainable wherever you go across Kano State. I have noticed even most of the schools have closed down as early as possible. There are no children going to school like they used to go as early as possible in the morning. And also there are also presence of security personnel everywhere, because since yesterday the police commissioner informed us that they have made adequate arrangements to ensure the safety of lives and property. Now there are security operatives going on patrol across all commercial city of Kano. But then the anxiety generally is between the two major political parties, arguing as unpredictable as the other. This one is saying we are the ones that are going to win this judgment. This one is saying we are the ones that are going to win this judgment. But then generally the public perception is whatever will prevail, let there be peace and stability within the portfolio local government areas of Kano State. But I must tell you that there is anxiety and tension this morning. Even places of businesses, we can see that there are so many businesses around here that are closed down. This is one of the major streets in Kano, Zoo Road. But you can see how deserted it is. There are also just few handful of businesses that are going on. Many businesses have closed down. People have decided to remain at home. So the tension is actually very high this morning.
Okay, so from your observation, maybe from side talks or anything, is there anything like some sort of irregularities that some people are planning to, do at the end of the judgment? Did you hear anything? Did you observe anything irregular? Idris, we will connect with you if there's any development. Thank you so much.
All right, let's come back to the studio here, Clement. Now, on what is happening, you know, we have to, of course, apologize for the audio issues that we have from our reporters out there. But then, what is your take on everything, you know, that Sager and Idris said based on, you know, the environment?
Thank you. I will start with the Supreme Court. 2 days ago, when I spoke with some of the councils that were involved and they confirmed that the data has been given, all of them told me that the Supreme Court specifically told them that you are not entitled to more than 2 councils.
Wow.
Which means that they have sent the tags, which will corroborate what Sagira has also gathered. So without the tag, you can't even access, for our viewers maybe that have not been to that axis before, the 3-arm zone is designated in such a way that there is only one pathway that leads to both the National Assembly, the Supreme Court, and the Aso Villa. So you have to go through those security points. So without it, you can't even access that place. So, and I heard what Sagir said, that even Senior Advocate of Nigeria, normally what happens is that in this kind of big case, at trial court, you can have as much as 20, 50 lawyers, although the rule says just 5. But the only place that is very, very effective, the rule is implemented effectively, is at the Supreme Court. Even if you come with 20, you can only announce 5 as counsel. But with this judgment, they're even saying that no, we are not even aligned at 5. Come with only 2 because we have 8 judgments. Imagine if each of the candidates come with 5, 10 each. There won't be space in the Supreme Court, and the security will become more complex to undo.
Yes,
and
thank you.
To Kano, what as Idris said is not surprising. A lot of people will just, because of fear of the history that Kano has had with some of this political violence, a lot of people just want to stay back. I spoke with a proprietor yesterday night, and he was asking me for advice that should they open the school or not. I said, we don't expect anything to happen, because even if the judgment will come before 12, everything should be done. But from the tone, from the way he was sounding, I know that definitely he's going to communicate with his pupils, parents, not to bring them to. So it's not surprising that a lot of people just want to stay safe. We'll wait for the judgment to complete, because it's not just even the political actors that should be afraid of. People take advantage of these issues to foist violence, to ransack people, to vandalize, to steal. Because we all know there's hunger in town.
Did you have some sort of nostalgia when you saw Zuru this morning?
Yes, because I probably would have been on that street this morning also, or go through that street.
Clement Oloyede, the Group Politics Editor, Daily Trust, for joining us this morning to talk about the situation.
Thank you very much for having me.